Okay. All right. There are people coming from all over the place here. We have some people who are joining us via Zoom. We have other people who are joining us by the Mighty Network. We have other people who are joining us through our Facebook Live. So just wanted to say welcome to all of you for being here today. I am Dr. Eddie Caparucci, and it's an honor to have you. We have a really interesting program for you today. What we're going to be talking about is the idea of, why being sober is not enough. And what I'm going to be interviewing Stephen Thomas. Stephen is a certified coach and he's a good friend. He is a very talented young man, and he's going to be talking about his story about, after getting sober, why that just wasn't enough to help his relationship and his marriage. And I hope that as you listen to this, that you're going to start to get some more insight to the things that you'll be able to do to help your relationship. Also, what you can do to help your wife heal through all of this. Because again, we've seen it time and time again. It's sometimes easier for a man to be able to deal with their addiction and learn to manage that than it is to be able to deal with the pain that their wife is going through. And you know what? That's the hill a lot of guys die on. And I am determined to help men get over that hill. And that's why we feel like today is going to really bring a lot of insight with that. So Stephen, why don't you take a moment and just kind of introduce people about what you do and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. I'm Stephen Thomas. I am a life consultant, and I help men that are looking to outgrow unwanted sexual behavior and attraction, and then I also help couples that are looking to repair their marriage. This has been a journey of me facing my own issues in my own life and weaponizing my story to, kind of provide help from a perspective of someone who's kind of been in the trenches. And I love doing it, and I'm having a blast.
That's good. And I know you do amazing work. You do great work. And the need is vast, and there's just not enough harvesters out there. So we're glad that you're a part of that whole network that we've developed. So let's start off with, Stephen, why don't you begin by sharing briefly your recovery story with everybody?
Yeah, so like a really high level view is that I grew up in a Christian family, but at age 7, I still was exposed to pornography. And I experienced lots of shame and lots of self-contempt because of that. And sorry, I'm just going to acknowledge the beeps of people entering the waiting room here in Zoom. But if you guys could just ignore that as best as possible. But yeah, I experienced lots of shame, and that shame created a life for me of hiddenness and duplicity. And I found like in that place of hiding, the issue just grew, and I found myself eventually buried under a heap of sexual brokenness that got way out of hand, went way further than I ever expected, and I felt completely hopeless and stuck. And I struggled like that from age 7 into my 20s. And in my early 20s, my parents, I was a Christian my whole life. I never lost faith or anything like that. But I would pray for God to, deliver me from this, like, can this go away, God? And the way I believe God answered that prayer is he gave my parents some dreams about me, of what was going on, and they confronted me. And I feel like the way he, answered my prayer is, hey, here's an opportunity to not hide anymore. Do you want to take it? So I responded. He kind of cornered me though, because like I was kind of weaselly. I was a bit of a liar, to be honest. And from that though, he kept kind of coming after me, like lots of dreams, stuff like that. That it kind of got obvious that I was really struggling. And eventually, I took the bait, and I began to build a world of trying to not hide anymore. And yeah, that looked like what I call just living in the light, not living in darkness. So my parents put me in counseling. I got in some small groups, and in that season, there was a point too where I met a beautiful woman who is now my wife, and I fell in love with her. And in that season, I remember, going on a date with her and realizing this girl's really special. I think she's the one. And so early on in our relationship, I confessed to her about my past, about my sexual brokenness and hiddenness that I had been lived in. And because I didn't want to blindside her, like, hey, wedding night or something like that. Hey, guess what? I felt like she deserved to know and kind of know what she was getting into. And 6 weeks into dating her, I did have a relapse of porn. And I confessed that to her pretty quickly. And in that space, she, cried, and she let me know how it impacted her. And she let me know that she's like, I'm being honest, I just don't know if I have the grace to be with someone who's going to consistently deal with this, consistently be relapsing. I don't know if I can handle that, to be honest with you. And I said words I could not believe. I heard words come out of my mouth I could not believe, which was, okay, I'll never do it again. And that was almost 14 years ago, but I've actually kept that promise to her. I've been free from porn. This summer will be 14 years.
Wow, congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
And what amazing parents. Even they have that dream, but yet, they confront you. That was very difficult for them. So, I mean, you're very blessed in that way. And it seems like you're very blessed with a wonderful, woman who, has stood by your side with your relapse. And, that part of probably the reason why you have that drive also to stay sober right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, her honesty with me kind of put a fear of God in me. Like, if I don't change, I'm afraid I'm going to lose her. Like, I had a fear of God directly and her.
Right.
And it was like a healthy fear, because she wasn't like mean about it. It was just
Mhm.
a fact, like, I'm just being real with you. I
Right.
do that.
Well, we appreciate that. That's wonderful. We love see, guys, what we're talking about here is vulnerability. That vulnerability, that's really important, what's needed as we go into this discussion about what it means to be emotionally developed men. So, Stephen, as you know, I'm a major advocate for educating men who have been in recovery, to teach them that it doesn't stop there, that doesn't stop when they just become sober, but they have to work on becoming more aware of your inability to emotionally connect. And as I said before, I refer to them as emotionally developed. I myself was once emotionally undeveloped. Now, you told me once you became sober, your marriage was still experiencing difficulty. Can you explain what that looked like?
Yeah, I wish I could say, oh yeah, I didn't use porn and we've been happily ever after. That is not the story. My marriage in the first 5 years especially sucked, is the best word to describe it. My wife and I just struggled to do conflict well. It seemed like we couldn't avoid conflict. And the way we would navigate conflict is it would spiral out of control. Like, there'd be shouting, name calling, late nights, crying, when we were young, first married, I know I don't look very old. I'm 38 years old. So this is like 25, 26 years old. We were in an apartment complex, and, our neighbors called the cops on us because we were so loud into the middle of the night. I mean, it was bad.
Mm.
And the thing is that, like, for me, as someone who had struggled with addiction my entire life, like 7 onward, and I was really, I realized I said yes to porn at age 7 because I was sort of groomed for it. I was exposed to sexual concepts on television, but my point is, my whole, like, the part of my life I can remember, I had this addiction, and I didn't know how to handle emotional pain, and I was used to having an outlet to escape it. So with that said, I didn't give her space to express her emotions. I was very dismissive and just thought that there was something wrong with her. Like, especially because I was experiencing freedom from porn. I was like, you know what? Go find another guy who is free from porn as long as I've been. I didn't know anybody. And lots of guys, this topic still isn't talked about very much. So I was like, you got a good guy and you think I'm like a problem or I'm causing you pain. I just was dismissive. And I made her feel like crap. I would name call. To be honest, I called her a bitch. I had to repent of that, and I had to repent from the negative belief systems I had about her that had developed.
Mm.
And and yeah, and I thought she was just controlling all that stuff. So she got to a point where I had just worn her out to the point that I actually don't remember exactly when it was, but I mean, she legit wanted to divorce me. I mean,
Right.
we got to that place. So I mean, that's what a crappy marriage looked like after freedom from porn. And that really sucked. I was really disappointed because I was so happy on one hand to be experiencing freedom, and on the other hand, I was just like, I'm I can't win. You know, I hadn't been able to win in this porn struggle. Now my marriage is awful. It was really
So
discouraging, disappointing.
what do you think if you look back at it now, and if you had to, if you could have done things a little bit differently at that point, what do you think what were some of the weaknesses that you saw that you were like, you know what, I could have changed this, I could have changed that?
I mean, the very first one that comes to my mind is get help, honestly. Like, I think there's lots of shame about, just like there's shame about sexual brokenness, there's lots of shame about marriage brokenness. And, you know, we would reach out to pastors at times, but we didn't reach out and get as vulnerable as we needed to be getting the help that we needed. So, in some ways, it felt like a waste, you know? And we tried getting help from pastors, and they were helpful, but we just knew we needed more. And eventually we landed on getting a life consultant, which is kind of like a coach, counselor hybrid type thing. And that was really a key for us. Like, I would just say, like, look, especially if you grew up in a family where it's not like, if you grew up in a family and you look at your parents and say, oh, like, I know there's some issues with their marriage, I don't want to repeat what they did, that means it wasn't demonstrated to you, like, how to do healthy relational connection in the context of a marriage. So don't expect to just know how to do it. And if you've been escaping pain through porn, don't expect to now know how to, like, men and women are very different. You know, I didn't know how to steward my wife's emotional pain, you know? So get help was the very first thing I would tell people.
But that you bring up a really good point, an interesting point about you not being able to sit with emotional pain, and therefore not being able to help your wife with her emotional discomfort. What were some of those emotions that you must have been going through at this time, early in the marriage, and we're having all the conflict? I mean, it's not what you thought you were gonna wind up with. What were some of the emotions that you had to deal with?
You know, like, I'll yeah, there was anger, obviously, there was things like that, but I'll just tie this to some of the blind spots that you talk about in your book, like emotional
Yeah.
intimacy. I didn't know how to be emotionally intimate with myself, so, like, I just didn't know how to have needs. So if we were working through conflict, it'd be like, oh, you're okay, good, I'm okay. But then if there was something that I needed to resolve or needed validation or to experience connection over, I didn't know how to give myself that. I didn't know how to really acknowledge it for myself. I would just, part of my Christian upbringing was in faith. I would just be okay. And then along with that, I would know how to express it to her. And so it could be all kinds of things. It could just be like, hey, like, you know what? The way you said that actually did hurt me, it'd just be like, I'll focus on what I've done to clean up your mess, but I'm going to be okay. Stephen has no problems,
Right.
and over time, I talked about how I had to repent of calling my wife a bitch. Like, I thought she was controlling and was running over me, but what was actually going on is that I didn't know how to speak up for myself, and therefore I would get run over because she knew how to speak up for herself. But it wasn't that she was doing anything wrong. It was just my lack. So
Hmm.
so that created this dynamic where, yeah, like, my needs weren't getting met in the relationship. She would call me out. It's like, it feels like you're not connected. When you say I love you, I'm not feeling it.
But see,
So
that's where I want to go next. I want to get a sense of where she was coming from. And what you're saying is that she was telling you, I'm feeling distant between the two of us. Is that
yes,
accurate?
yeah, she was feeling the distance. She could feel my anger and my bitterness that had developed for her, even if I was like, no, no. She's like, I mean, your actions prove otherwise. The way that you can instantly get short with me, instantly snap on me, be lovey-dovey, and then in the snap
Right.
of a finger.
Right. Was that confusing for you though? The fact that when she was saying, I don't feel connected, did you feel connected? Did you feel like, hey, we're okay? Was
So
that a bit of a disconnect for you?
it was a disconnect. Looking back, it's easy to see now that I was used to a certain level of disconnectedness. And I mean, something I've been tell my clients is like, sometimes we get used to kind of living in a certain level of disconnect, or even just a certain level of triggered where it just feels normal. Some guys are like, I don't even think I get triggered. I just all of a sudden have thoughts of wanting to use porn, and I don't know where it comes from. And then I'm like, I think you just are always disconnected, or you're always in a triggered state and you're unaware. It's that low emotional IQ.
Yeah, it definitely. You're absolutely right about that. There are triggers that are there. There's those emotional triggers that are mostly subconscious. But to your point, they're just not aware. They're oblivious to what's really happening, and that's why people like you and I need to educate, to teach people, to teach men. You know what? We have to be more mindful and alert to one, what's going on with us. What are going on with my thought process today? Do I feel like do I have a lot of clarity, or do I feel like my judgment's off? Do I feel like I have a lot of racing thought? Do I have a lot of fantasies going on? What am I doing emotionally? Have my mood shifted one way or another? Physically, how am I feeling physically? And then even spiritually, how do I feel? Am I close to God? Am I away from God? Because not knowing all of this, again, we're just walking through life aimlessly. And the key to being able to manage that addiction, as well as to become emotionally developed, is to do the self-reflection that we need to do in order to understand why. Why do I think, feel, and act the way I do? I mean, what do you think about all that?
You're right. I mean, like what you're describing to me is describing what I think is kind of the foundation of connecting with others, which is your own self-awareness. In other words, connecting with myself. If I can't connect to myself, I can't connect to other people. I can't connect to God. Like if I'm praying a detached prayer to God, like, David wrote the Psalms from his heart of hearts. He knew how to connect in and get
Right.
real with God, right? And he experienced extreme intimacy, with the Lord because of that. And that's available to us. But a lot of us feel disconnected from God and other people. And it actually starts with, we don't honor like ourselves in the sense of like, I'm feeling this, but now you're not allowed to feel that. You're just okay. And maybe even like there's some bad theology mixed in. In faith, you're okay. I mean, that was one of the, like, my parents gave me a big spiritual heritage, and I'm so grateful. I mean, I'm so grateful for that. It has done me so well. On the flip side, there was a little bit of like, no, like emotional issues can't exist because that's been dealt with at the cross, and that was how we navigated the fact that we were a little bit emotionally illiterate as a family. Not completely, we had some strength, but yeah.
Right.
But that's the pain though, that meant I would get in pain and not know what to deal with it, and
And
yeah.
that's the big issue with all of us, is the fact that, parents are supposed to walk us through the various steps of development in our early age, in our early childhood. They're supposed to teach us how to be attuned to other people. I can read other people. Teach us how to have empathy. I can put myself in somebody else's shoes. Teach me how to trust. Okay, I could trust people. That I learned to, versus that I have this sense of mistrust because I didn't know if my parents were there or not going to be there for me. And the other idea about this idea, emotional regulation. How do I regulate my emotions? Parents are supposed to teach kids the words that describe emotion, because we don't know what those words are. So all we do is we show anger, we show sadness, and we show frustration, and they're supposed to walk us through the process to help us identify, no, what you're really feeling is disappointed, or you're feeling hurt. And it's okay to feel disappointed. That's and walk you through so you understand. We didn't get that. And then add on top of it, they don't show us how to sit with that emotional distress. And to me, that is a key factor. Because if I can't sit with emotional pain as a child, what do? I learn, I come up with that one solution. I won't think about it because I can't come up with any other solutions. I don't have a whole lot of worldly experiences. I'm more emotionally based in my thinking than I am cognitively based, right? So I won't think about it. And how do I not do that? I distract myself. Too much food, too much television, too many video games, whatever, until you stumble across porn. And then, oh my gosh, here it is, the mother of all distractions. And we take that into our adult world and we just continue with all of that. You were talking about at home that, again, emotional connection wasn't very strong or present, if at all, because again, it was something we give all that to God. So what's it like to grow up in that kind of an environment that is really just barren of emotion, that inability to really have a voice and to share what you feel? What was it like doing that?
I think it's here's the thing, to be more accurate about it. So my family was like a worshiping family. We were the worship team. So lots of the emotions that would get expressed to God in worship. And so there was something there, and that was actually really helpful. But I think the biggest thing that I saw was the fruit was just disconnect that was normal between my parents, them not knowing how to navigate conflict, and knowing how to do that in a healthy way where, oh, there's a problem and we can actually walk through this and honor each other. Like my dad was a great guy. I think he, in his heart, I don't think he ever wanted to be like chauvinistic or anything like that. But for him, he would pull the man card on this, you know what I mean? And use that so that he wouldn't have to deal with my mother's pain, and that's just from the culture he grew up in and stuff like that. And I think if you told him, oh, don't do that, he'd be like, no, that's bad. But he didn't know how to actually practice that. He wasn't emotionally aware enough, I think to not practice that. So I think it was just the pain of seeing like their disconnect, and also the fact of not knowing how to navigate things like conflict, so that we would just kind of check out, like lots of television watching, It's like, and you see this today, like we could either spend time with your spouse working on connection, or we can just veg out on TV every single night, and go nowhere with our lives. And that was kind of, I feel like my family just escaped through television, and also sports was the other place that we escaped. And sports provided some goodness, truthfully, and again, God's provided some goodness too, but there's still a need to be able to connect and have, be able to work through differences and honor one another. That was just something I didn't witness. Right. And
yeah, you get that, but would you get that also, the idea that I'm watching my parents struggle with their connection, and you have no outlet to talk about that. You have no ability to share your emotions or feelings. So now you get married and your wife is upset about something. I mean, you didn't have the model to, how do I deal with it, right?
Exactly. That's exactly it. I didn't know how to do it. I repeated behaviors like, oh, my wife, she's being a woman, things like that, dismissing her to avoid it. And then in my anger, like the way I guess I learned to get needs met is if I had an anger outburst, I'd let things pile up and then explode. And then I would justify my anger and justify my raging, and that, well, you did this, blame, and that was kind of that truthfully was a bit of what I was modeled as a kid, and I just repeated it. And that's what happens, right? I mean, we repeat what we're taught.
That's right. Because, hey, you only know what you know.
Exactly.
I don't know what I don't know. So, you, as you know, in my book, Why Men Struggle to Love, I outlined the 14 blind spots, and you brought up one. You talked about the inability to sit with emotional discomfort, which I told you I think is one of the biggest problems we have. And if we can solve that, we can easily be able to deal with our addiction and our addictive behavior. What can you name one or two others that resonate with you of the 14 blind spots?
Well, even to dive in a little bit more to the lack of emotional intimacy, like, what happens is we replace emotional intimacy with sexual intimacy. I mean, there's a connecting, I don't want to say hormones, chemicals, things released in our brain in sexuality. It's really funny. I was talking to my wife about this before, and we just both laughed because of how stupid it sounds now. But I remember, while we were dating or while we were engaged, we struggled to be sexually pure in that time, but we were still trying to keep ourselves from intercourse. And I remember we'd be in fights and stuff, and I'd be like, I just know that once I can have sex with you, like you'll be able to feel then that I love you, because I associate it. We just laugh like this is just so stupid, um,
But
boy,
it's not, but think of it, it's not stupid.
I hear you.
Because again, one of the other steps that we're supposed to be that we go through with in our early stages of childhood development is to be able to integrate love and sexuality. Parents who are supposed to teach us that how love integrate with sex. And that means not shaming us about sex. If a little boy, 4-year-old boy is sitting here rubbing his crotch because it just feels good, he's not thinking about sex, it's just soothing. And so we stop that, that's disgusting, don't ever touch yourself again. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
So, but we don't learn how to integrate the two. And if you don't know that, then how you're going to look at it, and you get exposed to porn at an early age, you're going to associate connection with physical intimacy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know emotional intimacy. I would go over to physical intimacy, and that set us up for a really crappy first 5 years of marriage, because people don't realize that part of the reason I think God wants us to refrain from sex, before marriage, is the engagement process. Like, you can do the hard conversations and develop your conflict skills with one another, and basically lay a foundation of safety with one another by doing the hard conversations well. And like that creates safety in marriage, which is a great foundation for building a great sex life in marriage.
Yeah,
and
right.
and we skip that piece, right? So
It
so
also
that's
builds emotional intimacy,
yes,
right?
exactly.
And
Exactly.
once the physical intimacy is introduced, there you shut down the emotional part, because that's where we're like lasered onto that.
Yeah, and the truth is too that to sustain a great sex life in marriage, you need to have emotional intimacy, because porn movies teach us in a really poor way about sex. It's like everyone knows what to do, you don't have to say anything and stuff, but it actually requires communication. It requires emotional intimacy, because it's awkward. That's it just is. You build it, you develop your sexuality together, and especially in those first few years, it's just about safe space and going through a joy experience of discovering each other, and I had to bring that up. But emotional intimacy, I mean, will actually feed, developing a great sex life to sustain. But yeah, so that was one of my, blind spots. Yeah, and then along with that is avoiding emotional pain. So if I can't deal with my own emotional pain in myself, how am I going to be able to deal with Lisa's, my wife? And that's where all the blaming, all the dismissive, and along with this too is a third one, which was hypersensitivity. So when she had negative feedback about how she was experiencing me, I was super, I believe it was critical. And also I just, I couldn't take it, and that was really hard, because like, the truth is, to get out of that, I had to learn to be able to hear her feedback and let it affect me, and be able to own, right? Like owning, like, oh my God, I'm sorry that's how you're experiencing me. I'm sorry for my behavior. And actually attuning with her, to tune with my wife, I had to learn to sit and not be sensitive, and
Right.
And learn to connect with her, validate. So I mean, yeah, so those were really like, to be honest, Eddie, when I look through your blind spots, I feel like I can connect with a portion of almost everyone, but those three really stand out.
Yeah, and most people, if people go with they between 8 and 10, or ones that they could really resonate with, but they feel like there's little pieces of all of them. And it's really interesting if we go through them, if I go through each of them one at a time with with clients, we usually do like one a week, and then it's like, oh, okay, this section coming up, and no, I don't think that's really one of mine. I go, well, just read it anyway, and next week they get back on and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I struggle with lack of contentment. I never thought that was a problem for me. But there are so many areas and issues that we are struggling with when it comes to being emotionally developed. And so talk a little bit about what were some of the things you did, like you just talked a little bit about how you had to be able to sit to really actively listen to
Yeah.
your wife. Well, what were some of the other things you did to try to help you to emotionally connect?
Yeah. Just going back to something I said earlier, like getting help was really key. Like, because I needed someone to help me learn to do just that, sit in the emotional pain and get me. This would be like another answer to stop blaming her and see, oh, these are your triggers, Stephen. This is your story. Like for the first year of getting like help, professional help, I was like thinking they're gonna see my wife over time. They're gonna see she's the one with the problem. Took me a year of being told, no, 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 it's your triggers, to actually start believing. I was that hard-headed, unfortunately. And
You and the rest of us.
yeah,
Okay, the rest of us
exactly.
are all hard-headed. So
Yeah. So it took someone like seeing us regularly, though. Like you said, we're designed by God to need parents, to need someone to walk us and teach us how to do intimacy, how to do emotional vulnerability. And because there's such a void in that area of development, like really across the globe, I actually think that's why there's such a movement this day in getting in coaching and therapy and stuff, because like we were kind of unparented in this area and people are struggling now and wanting help. So when people overcome it, it's like there's just a need. Like, yeah, like I want to see society heal, and I think strong families is the key to that, right? I think like that's a representation of how God wants to heal society. So it's like people need help. So one, just opening up and letting people really see into the junk key so that someone could walk me through and be like, Stephen, no, you're blaming her. Like I'm talking to both of you. I'm getting to know your wife too. No, she's not what you think, and having that help was really important. And then learning that like if I have a reaction, like that's a big reaction, like an anger reaction or a freeze response, that's a trigger. And triggers are related to my own story. I like how the internal family systems method of like therapy is calling that a trailhead. So a trigger is like, oh, there's a story here that's contributing to that. So learning to familiarize myself with my own story when I trigger, like taking that as an opportunity to like, for me, walk away, journal. This is where I feel. So when I journal something where I'm blaming my wife, I'm like, that's blame. I know that goes nowhere. I know that's me guessing myself. I'm feeling it, I'm acknowledging it, but I'm using it to get down this trailhead to get to the root issue, which is like, oh, this rejection I experienced when I was younger. And this wound that's just sensitive from my childhood that's manifesting today. And from that space, I can acknowledge myself and validate, like, Stephen, I'll talk to myself and I'll say, Stephen, it makes sense that this is hard for you right now. It makes sense that you're wanting to be defensive. It's okay. You can trust your wife. You can trust too that God's really proud of you that you're trying to do this, even if it's hard and you don't want to do it.
right.
Like all that stuff, so that I could push myself to make an action towards connection and actually work those muscles out. But it was like, again, that's my relationship with myself, that I'm allowing myself to be loved by me, allowing myself to be loved by God, allowing myself to be loved by my wife. So really reversing the curse of rejection that I had experienced just through my story. So yeah, the combination of getting help, having people help me see this stuff so I can make sense of it on my own. So when I'm struggling, I can actually like I said, my wife and I, we can get through conflicts. We have hard conversations. We get to the other side and we feel great. And now like a conflict doesn't have to last a week, a month. It's like where it's like, no, it's really resolved. We're not just ignoring it. Some things are sensitive and might just take longer, but we even know how to connect during that process, and we truly have a relationship we love. I was telling my wife before coming on here, it's like, this would be powerful if people, like, at one point you need to get on here with me because they need to hear you validating that I'm not BSing them.
Right.
So,
We'll have to do that next time, I think.
yeah,
I love the idea what you're talking about is the story, it's like for every trigger we have. Right. That's why I go with my inner child model, because that
yes,
trigger, that kid going into a storage unit, he's pulling something out that reminds him of what is going on here, which then just intensifies our level of discomfort. It
yeah,
increases our risk of acting out. I just want to mention to everybody, if you're listening, if you're here on Zoom, there's a chat. If you want to put a question in there in the chat, and if you're listening on Facebook, which I just looked there, there's something that's running. Why don't you put in the comment section if you have a question. Stephen, you have the Facebook page up, the live link right now?
if you just go to your
Okay,
Facebook.
I know. I wondered if you might have had it up there already, but you don't. Okay.
No, no, sorry.
I'll put it back up. It's not a problem. But anyway, we really would like to answer any questions that you may have with all of this. So, like I said, leave questions in the chat, and then we'll also on Facebook, we will, look at the questions there too. So, so therefore, again, that idea, what I hear you're saying is many times when I think that I want to go and blame my wife for something, I have to slow everything down and really evaluate and look to see what is truly happening right now here. And is what I'm doing, the actions, are they valid, or are they just, again, based on a trigger because I may feel very hypersensitive to criticism or rejection or something along those lines?
Yeah. So, um, so when I feel a trigger, what I do now is I do my best, like you said, to try to calm down. And if I'm really stuck, like my wife and I sometimes in conflict, we'll just put ourselves in timeout. Like if I keep talking to you right now, I'll probably say something I need to apologize for. I don't want to treat you that way. All right. So I'm just triggered. That's where I'm at. It's not, and even at times, like, I'm not saying this is your fault, like I know this is going to be connected to my story, and then I like to find the trailhead. Like, what does this feel like? God help me, like, see, like, when have I felt this way before, and invite him into that. And I just kind of let the emotions come out. I like to jot them down because that process of writing it down for me, like, it slows me down and gets me regulated. And it helps me identify, oh, that's a blame statement. I know that's not the truth here. Like, there's something else here. So what it does is it allows me to communicate from a non-triggered space, like an adult, right? Rather than the child driving
Right.
the car. And I'll say what is okay is to acknowledge, like, it's okay to speak about like how we're wounded and how we're hurt, so it's okay to say, like, when you're saying that to me, what I'm experiencing is pain. It hurts. You know what I mean? And that's not blaming, right? It's saying,
Right.
you did something, I'm experiencing it this way. It could be about my trigger, but I'm calm. I'm not like, you did that, and that's why I'm feeling this way. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
once you get out of the trigger, you're going to find your ability to own, which to me is being an adult, like ownership and adulthood. I think it's huge. And it's just a huge part of health too, truthfully. So yeah, so I mean, that's kind of really like the crux of it, is looking to own like my story and like how, like, hey, this is hard for me, And then there's times like we're both triggered, and there's times that like it feels like we're at a standstill. And because I've built a history of knowing how to communicate my needs and get my needs met in my relationship with my wife, it's actually become easier for me. And at first it wasn't, because we had to build this history, but to be like, hey, Stephen, I know you have needs right now. I'm gonna pay attention to you. I'm gonna get them met right now. I want to focus on Lisa. I am a bit of a traditionalist. Like, I like to be the one to apologize first. Like, if I'm going to lead my family, I want to lead by example and servanthood. So I want to, like, I mean, it's not that I'm always the first one to apologize, but I try to get there first, actually, just because I'm like, I want to set the standard through how I behave. Yeah.
At that point, that's what we need to do. we need to set the standards. We need to be ahead of the curve. And I understand, I get it. You know, you guys, you're dealing with you're dealing with women who are dealing with, betrayal trauma. And, it's not always easy to be able to process through uh, a lot of the pain. But again, the way I look at it is I am going in there and I'm looking at the pain points. I'm trying to understand what got us here right now. And I will work with her as long as I can until I start to feel flooded. And when I feel flooded, then I'm going to be saying, look, time out. And some women don't want that. They don't like it. But you know what? I'm not asking for a timeout. I'm taking a timeout. And I'm taking it for the reason Stephen just said. He said it. It's perfect. I do not want to sit here and bang head with you. You do not deserve that. I put you to enough pain. But if I stay another 2 minutes, that's what's going to happen. So I need a few minutes to go get myself settled so that I can come back and we can continue. And that's the thing for you to say, I will be back. The most important thing you could tell them. So therefore, again, we do it and then you go, you replenish yourself. What's the pain point? Why are we getting shifted around? Let me go back, try it again. If she's still so escalated and it's not getting there, you know what? I'm taking another timeout. And you do that until either she calms down or we say, you know what, we're postponing this until tomorrow. And I know she may chase you through the house. Okay. And it might be, well, you know what? I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go for a ride for a moment. We need to calm everything down.
Yeah.
Okay. And that doesn't mean we don't allow her to escalate at times, because that's her grieving, and she has to do that. That's okay. But you'll allow it to happen until the point that I just can't take any more of this. And do not use that as an excuse. Like, okay, I've been doing it for 2.5 minutes, I'm ready to run. No, you endure. Sit with that emotional distress. I promise you, unless you're married to a sociopath, it's not going to kill you sitting with this pain. Okay? It may kill you if you have a gun and you want to, but that's not what's going to happen here. Okay? Not going to kill you. You can be able to get through it. And that's part of how we grow mature in our maturity, by going through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to go through hard stuff, right, Stephen? I mean, we didn't want to do that.
No, I love it when everyone is happy with me. It feels really great. I can take especially from my wife.
Yeah, that's what we all think. So let me go see what we have here. From a question standpoint, we have a few that are here. What kind of couples help do you recommend? I have trouble with non-CSAC therapists who say porn is healthy, and heard about problems with traditional marriage counselors who tell the wife to loosen up. Yeah, we definitely do not want to be doing that. You need to make sure you're vetting out, okay, any counselor you're going to go to. And you have to be asking them about, what are your viewpoint about, betrayal trauma? Have you worked with betrayal trauma? What is your viewpoint about pornography? Okay. But the type of therapy I believe work best is emotionally focused therapy. And the reason I think emotionally focused therapy works best is because it teaches you and her not to talk about the stuff, but talk about how you feel about the stuff. And that isn't in anger, that is with the other emotions that we have. And again, by Sue Johnson, she was the creator of that marriage counseling approach. It has an 80% success rate. It is very good, because what we're doing is, you guys who know me, you hear me say it all the time, slowing everything down. We slow down. We don't talk about what the stuff is. We talk about how we feel about this stuff. I don't know, Stephen, what do you think about finding that marriage counselor? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll maybe come in from like, I'm a life consultant, and what that means is it's sort of a hybrid of life coaching and counselor. I'm not like a licensed therapist or anything like that, but the coach in me is say, hey, let's move forward, and then the consultant is like, let's look backwards too. So when we're trying to move forward into a better marriage and you hit a wall, it's connected to your past. That's when we look backwards. So with that said, from someone like me who's not an actual, I'm not a certified licensed therapist. My wife and I got help from someone with the same title as me. And the reason why that worked is this person was open about their story and had overcome and was walking in health. And we knew that. They on a really well-known podcast where they're really open and we're like, they know, like we needed people who've been through it. So there's something to me about finding people who have overcome and are walking in a certain amount of authority. That's why, like, I really excel at helping people get through some of the nitty gritty. Like people are like, we're stuck here. I'm like, been there. This is what it was. And I'm using therapy techniques that were given to me through others, we've all, assessed. But like you said, Eddie, vet, and it's okay to, like, if somebody's not working out, I think people can get hopeless. Oh, I tried, and then get hopeless. But it's okay to sort of date and be like, this isn't working, or something doesn't feel right. And you can be honest about yourself. As someone who was not emotionally connected, it was hard for me to acknowledge that, to be honest. But truthfully, it's important to find, people that like are walking in an authority on a subject, so you can trust their input. I mean,
Right.
Unfortunately, I think people go to churches too, because I grew up with this idea, oh, you're a pastor, you must be good at everything, and lots of pastors aren't equipped to help maybe at the level of need that you have. So even if you try pastoral help and it hasn't worked, just keep looking. It's strength to say I need help, because that's saying I'm not giving up. I'm not going to be hopeless. I'm going to walk forward and create the future I want. And I'm not, if I try and fail again.
I've seen some of the most damaging things happen with people who have gone to a pastor for help, who is not trained. There are some who are, they trained, they understand this, but there are many who are not. And immediately, in many cases, the blame goes to the wife. It's your fault. You should have done this, or you should have done that, or you shouldn't have done this. And all they do is they take the trauma and they exacerbate it, and it goes from bad to worse. Are you waving your hand over there, Stephen?
We experienced that. Like, I was blaming Lisa, and I got my pastors to agree, and I think they were doing their best. They're great people, and it was something, but didn't get us to where we needed to be. And then we also then had to go through the pain of her feeling blamed, and me doing that to her, so
just like I said, vet them out. See, again, I love the idea. There are many ministries out there, couples, my wife and I are one of those. Don't reach out, don't have the bandwidth to do it, but there are many other couples that are out there. There you go. Many other couples that are out there. You reach out to Stephen, who they know they've been through it, and that they can help you with many of that. So next question is, what's the best way to learn more emotional maturity before getting into marriage? What do you think, Stephen? What's the best way that somebody can become more emotionally mature before they, I like that. I like the fact you want to do it before you get married. That's great.
Yeah. So I have two answers for it. The first is, I'll just quickly highlight the part of my story. Like, if you're in a relationship with a girl and engaged or whatever, instead of taking the easy path of physical connection, do the harder path of having the hard conversations and learn to do those well and experience extreme connection because of how you process those hard conversations together. So that's in that arena. And then in the other arena, which is your friends, like, I think it's actually really valuable to have friends that you will allow to trigger you, meaning put yourself out there, ask a vulnerable question. How do you experience me? Like, if there's anything, like, it'll trigger you because you'll probably discover your own hypersensitivity and work through it. But like, most guys I talk to especially struggle with feeling connection. And like, there's a world of, I think, Christianity where people just want to correct and fix and stuff like that. And so it's kind of hard because we have that history, but you want to find people that see you, can affirm you, and also tell you the truth. Because when you get that, like, you can be practicing this in your relationships, and you can be practicing the same tools so you'll be sharper going into marriage. Learn to speak truth and learn to do it in love, and learn how to clean up the mess for when you hurt people, and also how you affect them when you hurt them, like the impact.
Yes, that's a good point, because remember, in many cases, we don't know, where our weaknesses are in our emotional development. We don't have it. So I'm going to do my shameless plug of why men struggle to love. And in here, you will find 14 ways that men are at a deficit for their emotions, and what they can do. There's antidotes for each one, what you can do to improve your ability to emotionally connect. So anyway, a book is not enough. You also need to be able to practice. You need to be able to maybe go to someone and work with them, a coach like Steven who could teach you, but this at least gets you grounded to understand, oh, this is what my problems are. So, but that's what it is. Your next question from Benny. Benny wants to know, what does it mean to slow it down? Benny, well, we slow it down. One thing that we have to do first and foremost, and that is get out of our own head. We're just too much in our own head. We have to be more observant of our surroundings and our environment, of the people, so that I could start to pick up people's mood. I could look at their body language. I do all of it. That's helping me just slow everything down. We go back to the idea of what I said before, doing that self-evaluation. How am I doing mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? If I sit 3 or 4 times during the course of the day, which only takes like 2 minutes, it only takes a couple of minutes to do. But then I find that, you know what? Yeah, I do have a lot of racing thoughts. I do have a lot of worry. There's a lot of anxiety today. Just a couple minutes. Focus on your breathing, right? Focus on your breathing. Just feel that. That's all. And then the idea of, okay, I feel these emotions. This is what Steve was talking about before. I'm feeling all the raw emotion. And for me, most of these emotions are the inner child running amok. And the way we slow down is we turn and we go to rational thinking, adult thinking, and say, what are these emotions accurate? As many of you heard me say before, what I feel versus what I feel. They're usually two very, very different things. I don't know, Steve, you have anything to add about slowing things down?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. And I think that, when I was talking about slowing it down, it was putting myself in timeout, which I think at the core is, it's hard. I'm not going to say that this isn't a skill to get developed, but it's actually learning to be honest with ourselves. I am triggered right now. Like, I'm feeling a freeze response. Like, there's some really great tools. You can just search like trigger responses: fight, flight, fawn, freeze. Learn them well and learn when you're experiencing them, and get real with yourself. And when you realize you're experiencing them, that's a cue to go slow it down and get real, like, what's actually happening? Why am I having this trigger response?
Hi. The last question I have here right now, if we're winding down today, and we probably have room for one more if somebody wants to throw one in. If my wife has no sense of boundaries toward me, which is not uncommon, okay, that happens, and I ask for timeout, it's like I'm talking to the wall. I understand you're talking to the wall, but you still have an option, and that is, I'm not doing this. Okay, I'm not doing it. You have to have your boundaries also with this. And I know there are some counselors out there who don't believe that. They don't believe men should not have the boundaries. Only women should have boundaries. I'm sorry. I disagree, because I've seen it happen far too many times where it actually becomes abusive. And you know what? I understand we've done bad things. We've hurt people, but there's no reason for somebody to become abusive to us. because of it, because it moves away from, hey, I'm hurting, to, oh, I want to punish you. Now, don't go back and run to your wife and say, oh, Eddie said you're trying to punish me. Okay, because that's not the case. That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. So anyway, I see no way out. Yes, I'm a little too late, but I still need to understand me. And you know what? Unfortunately, you may be a little too late. Sometimes that does happen. At times, we've had couples come to us, and it's like, you know what? They've been to 4 or 5 other therapists, but by the time they get to us, they're done. They are just they have just eaten each other alive, and there's nothing left there to try to put back together. And I'm so sorry about that. But what you said was, I still need to understand me, and that you are absolutely right about. You need to start the journey of doing the self-reflection to understand why do I think, feel, and do what I do. And that is a process that goes on for the rest of your life. I've been in recovery for over 25 years. And I still uncover things when I do self-reflection. I just uncovered something about 6 weeks ago. It wasn't big, but still, it showed me one of the reasons why I do something. Great. I keep learning. And that's what we need to do. And you have to challenge yourself. And that's why once you get involved with that inner child model, or you start looking at the blind spots, and you start working through that, and then you start doing it on your own. And I have one of my clients this morning. I mean, this guy, I'm so proud of him. I wish I could put him out there and display him to everyone else so they could see what he's doing and how he's learned from every mistake, because again, he slowed everything down. So good for you. I'm glad that you realize. I'm sorry if your marriage doesn't work, but who knows? You know what? You continue to work on yourself, and she may eventually come around and say, you know what, maybe you are worth taking another look at. So I had a
Can I chime in
go
on
ahead.
that
Yep,
real
go
quick?
ahead. Go
I'll
ahead.
just say, like, I mean, I even had a couple where, they're at the brink of what felt like the end, and the advice I gave the guy was to actually speak up for himself in the marriage. And the thing is because he was feeling run over, and the truth is a healthy marriage is going to happen when you have both people showing up like adults. And actually, your wife wants a man. So they actually deep down want you to show up. So this idea of just being run over and submissive, you won't be experiencing connection, and the goal is connection. So I just want to add that, like, in a way, I said this guy, I gave him the advice to like actually speak up. It actually worked. They actually experienced some connection, and because he was disappearing, he wasn't emotionally present. I'm like, you're not emotionally present because you just kind of take it and you don't come back with how you experience the situation.
Right.
And it's like your wife wants you. She wants you to show up. She doesn't want a shell of you. So we can't keep detaching. And I know it sucks right now because this is going to cause conflict, but they were able to get through that conflict, and they were able to get closer from it.
Right. Good. All right. Question. I had a situation with a therapist where I lied to him for a year, and then things blew up. And I went to him and told him I was lying and that he needs to step up his game. Okay. And after a month, I broke up with him. And there are good therapists and there are bad therapists out there. And I've heard a lot of bad advice that comes from not just the church. The church, sometimes the response is just stop it. You're right. There are good therapists, there are bad therapists. And I'm not going to sit here and start bashing therapists. But you know what? If you're sitting and you're lying to a therapist for a year, I mean, don't you have some blame in that also? We should be able to pick up things along the way. We call it our gut. But you know what? There are people who are great liars.
Yeah.
They are amazing liars. I mean, you'd be stunned.
Yeah.
By it. And I think there's more, but I think there's some blame for you too with that, because there's nothing really to gain from all of it. So anyway, I do agree with you. There are good and there are bad. Steven?
I was just say, like, it's your investment. You know what I mean? So you won't grow if you're gonna hide, you know. And for people, there's a journey of vulnerability, but yeah, like, you know, I agree with you. We can't be responsible if someone's trying to deliberately lie. We'll
Right.
do our best, but love believes the best in people too, you know. And if I'm going to try to express that version of love, I'm going to believe people. Unless I might, if I get confused, like, so you're saying this and you're saying this, and I do that sometimes to force them the truth. And normally it's because I think people struggle with being honest with themselves. But if you know you're lying to the therapist, then yeah, you're setting yourself up to not have a good time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's some therapists who are very just, they're just mailing it in. There are, but I've had people lie to me, but you know what? I can't be there, just like what Steven's saying. I can't be sitting here taking this approach of, do I trust that? I don't think that's right. I think he's wrong. That's not gonna develop this sense of he trusting me, because that's what has to happen. You have to trust me, and I'm going to try to trust him. I'll say this though: when people lie, they usually trip themselves up. At some point, we usually pick something up somewhere along the line. How long they get away with it, don't know. But again, there's nothing to be gained from any of that. So anyway, that brings us to the end of our evening tonight. Stephen, I wanted to say thank you again for being so vulnerable and sharing a lot of wisdom with people. We've had a wonderful turnout. We got over 20 people here. I think we have over 20 people in the Facebook. I don't know how many people we have over at Mighty Network, but it was just great to have you on. And hopefully maybe we'll do this again, and maybe bring Lisa back and we could do something like that. What do you think?
I think that sounds great.
Great, wonderful. All right, so you folks, I hope this was enlightening. Again, you have to go beyond just being sober. We are emotionally undeveloped. We are emotionally immature, and we have to grow up. We have to become men. And I'm not saying this to insult you. I'm just telling you for the fact, because it is not your fault that you are this way. Again, we did not get what we needed when we did. However, if we continue the way we are, then it is our fault. And we need to be able to change. And I'll tell you something, again, from a guy who was very emotionally undeveloped, to somebody now who's, I think I'm fairly emotionally developed. My wife may argue with that point a little bit, but you experience life in a totally different way. You really do. So it's time, put in the effort, put in the time. If you're looking for a therapist, give Stephen a call. If you're looking for a therapist, give me a call. We have a network of people who deal with the inner child model, who are dealing with this idea of why men struggle to love. And we will help set you up and put you on the path of recovery. Okay. So good night, folks. Good seeing you. And hopefully maybe we'll get together. We'll do something like this again real soon. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.